Happy Tuesday.
Woo!
We're back again. How are you today, Sarah?
Oh, I am pretty good. I used to love Mondays, which I know is weird. But now that I don't work so much on Mondays, Tuesday is like my new Monday, and I love Tuesdays.
Oh, awesome. I love it. Well, you did work a little bit yesterday. We
I
did
did.
jump on live together and we went into the fact that you had done some research, like looked at the 300 years of history and nonprofits and boards and how a lot of the original ways that boards and nonprofits were set up have continued to be practiced to this day, and how a lot of that doesn't fit. It just doesn't work anymore.
Listen, I
Um,
don't know that it ever worked, to be honest, but I really
good,
think that it just never worked. And that it
good
just,
point.
yeah, I think that's what's going on here. But we'll talk more about that on Thursday.
Gotcha. So, to everybody who's watching us live, I'm here with Sarah Olivieri. She is the founder of Pivot Ground. She is the founder and inventor of the Impact Method, which is a phenomenal set of organizational processes. Oh gosh, it's just so comprehensive. It's structural setup of nonprofits. It really is a complete system that helps get any nonprofit organization or helps any organization run effectively, really, is what it comes down to. And this week we're leading up to this really cool master class that we're doing on Thursday, that where we're going to be talking about boards and how you can take your board from being maybe not so functional, maybe maybe not balanced correctly, um, maybe struggling with the CEO. We're talking about how we make that work effectively and what the relationship should look like and what the role of the board should be. And yesterday, um, as we are talking and kind of going over the history and some of these things that you had pulled up, you promised that you would talk about one particular topic, and that is building a fundraising board.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there's a lot of information out there that talks about and encourages people to build fundraising boards. And I know that there are a lot of reasons that you don't particularly agree with this. So I'd like you to maybe share with us a little bit about your opinions and what you have found.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I said yesterday, like I literally saw that webinar like a month or so ago, why you should build a fundraising board.
Mhm.
And I also see, probably one of the most common questions I get about boards, other than what is our job, is how do I get my board to fundraise? And that comes because nonprofits have been told that one of the primary functions of their boards is to fundraise, or even bigger, they've been told that it's to ensure that there are adequate financial resources. Now, of course,
That's
how
right.
could you do that if you didn't build a fundraising board? But I don't think you should make that one of your board's jobs, because that's the job of an entire department. They're called development departments or fundraising departments. And you have to pay like multiple people full-time salaries in order to do that job. I'm pretty sure that your volunteer board, unless you stack them full of very wealthy people who can just shell out, hundreds of thousands of dollars and raise hundreds of thousands with their small circle of friends. But there is
Gotcha.
a very big problem with that, which is why you shouldn't do that. So probably the main reason, and I have several, but the main reason why you shouldn't build a fundraising board has to
Mhm.
do with diversity, equity, inclusion, access. Some people like to include, or like I like to say, don't be, anti-bias, and anti-discriminatory, right? We want our boards to be inclusive. I'm sure a lot of you have seen workshops, DEI for boards, right? How to increase the diversity on your board. Well,
Mhm.
in case you weren't aware, Financial power, also known as wealth, you might call it rich people. If you come from a culture of calling people with money that, is very closely tied to all the systemic inequities and biases in our
Gotcha.
culture.
Okay.
So, except for like the very few rare exceptions, when you try to put people on your board who are
Mhm,
already wealthy and well connected to the world of wealthy people, you
mhm.
invite all of those inequities and biases that comes with their wealth onto your board. So, the number one thing you can do for improving diversity, equity, inclusion at your organization is to stop inviting it onto your board, right?
Sure.
Because you're stop creating this problem, right? Then some workshops and education can go a long way. But if you just keep, it's like somebody's dumping. If you have a fundraising board, you've got a fire hose of inequity and biases dumping water onto your board, and you're trying to bail it out with a little DEI bailing bucket, right? That's not going to work.
Gotcha.
You've got to shut off the fire hose and then bail out the remaining water, right? So that's a really big reason why in this day and age you should not build a fundraising board. I'll stop there for my, I know we're really limited on time today, and I'll give you some other reasons as well. But what do
Well,
you
wonderful.
yeah, does this strike you, Allison? Like, have you heard people saying this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in my experience, in dealing with boards, um, I feel like a lot of times the people who are members of a board are there for the wrong reason, or they're because they want to have that influence. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. What comes with that is all of their prior beliefs and the ways of thinking that they've been thinking. And I don't think that people stop and say, oh, wait a minute, how is this affecting this organization?
Yeah,
Right?
they don't.
How is this
And
affecting the outcome?
exactly. And, when I share this message, usually what I hear is, oh, yeah, we never really thought about that. Of course, that makes sense, right? Like, this hasn't been talked about it. And, it's not your fault if you didn't come up with that. I came up with that after like some really hardcore thinking about what's going wrong with boards.
Right.
And but there's a very long history that basically said, in the beginning it was the wealthy
Mhm.
people who were on the boards and wanted to
Right.
make all the decisions, and it was by design that this inequity in power, that like literally we say nonprofits now, but what's that older word? It's charity. And there
Mhm.
is such a strong unhealthy power dynamic between those who have giving to those who haven't. And it only takes, I think words are very powerful, and stepping back
Sure.
and using the word charity, that all of a sudden it
Right.
reveals that power dynamic. You probably know very quickly, oh yeah, charity is people who have giving to people who don't, right? That
Right.
probably comes to mind
Right.
very, very quickly. But we need to be moving out of a world, if we want to have a world with more equity in it, we need to
Mhm.
move out of that charity dynamic and
Mhm.
into an outcomes dynamic, that we're trying to
Right.
eliminate poverty, right? You're not going to eliminate
Right.
poverty when you've baked the existent, baked that dynamic into your model of helping. It's not going to work. So it's kind of part of a larger discussion of power dynamics. And I did a lovely podcast with Mazri and Treyas. Maybe we'll pop that in the link, or we'll put it in later. Go look her up. We had a great conversation about power dynamics in the
Yeah.
nonprofit sector.
Well, and that's really what it comes down to. Again, like we were talking about yesterday, 300 years of trying to determine who holds the power and what those powers are. And that's a struggle in everything. But there are resolutions to it, solutions to it. and
We'll talk about
and
this on Thursday.
exactly, exactly. Well, I'm super excited. We've got a whole heck of a lot of people signed up. I'm thinking we should open up a few more seats. So
Yes, it's not too late. Join us on Thursday live. It's what is Thursday's the 21st. Yeah, it's summer, right? So
Yep.
we don't know what day of the week it is anymore for some of us. 12 to 1 Eastern time. So if you're in another time zone, I'm really bad at time zones. So I'm not going to say out loud what it is because I'll probably make a mistake. But look up, I always have to look at Google Calendar, which has like this cheat for me, which tells me what all the equivalent time zones are. And then we got daylight saving. So look up your time zone. If your
Right.
time zone means I had an email like, oh, it's going to be 2 a.m. my time, not to worry. We're going to record it and you're going to have 7 days to watch the replay. Why not
Awesome.
lifetime? So many people love to do lifetime because if I give you lifetime access to recording, you're not going to watch it. So you get 7 days to make sure that you actually watch it. And yes, this is a paid webinar. Somebody asked me too, do each of my board members need to pay? It's not an expensive webinar. And yes, they do because they need to show up. And people who have put some skin in the game are more likely to show up. And one of the easiest ways to put a little skin in the game is just to put a little cash in the pot to hold yourself accountable to showing up and watching the training. Because trainings and master classes do you no good if you do not attend them. But we're going to have a lot of fun.
Good point.
I'm going to break down a ton of myths. And some of the things are going to be shocking. They're so shocking that I didn't give this webinar until now because honestly, I was scared to say something so different. I was just scared. I was like, people are going to be mad at me. People are going to say, you're wrong. The who's who of the nonprofit world are going to be like, oh no, how could you be so different? How could you say that this thing that every board does, you're not going to do anymore? And there's at least one thing that I am sure you are doing that I'm going to tell you not to do, and it's going to shock you. I'm not going to tell you what it is now. I'm going to tell you on Thursday. But what I will tell you now is another reason. We have 2 minutes. I see. I know I have a hard stop today. Another reason why you should build a fundraising board, right? And we kind of hinted at the beginning, which is fundraising is a critical function of most nonprofits. Some nonprofits generate their money from delivering their services directly. But many nonprofits have this two-pronged business model. If you've heard me talk about before, it's when I talk about you're making mission pie and you're making money pie, right? We're not going to take money pie is that fundraising function. It represents in a small organization at least a whole person's job. And in a larger organization, it represents an entire team of people whose full-time job it is to raise this money. And yes, it takes money to make money and it takes money to raise money. And on a very, very good day, it takes 25 cents to raise each dollar. If you need a little measurement there, that's 25% of your money coming in. You want that going out to bring that money, right? So if you want $100,000, you need to be spending 25, you need to be spending proportionally as much. So as I was saying, don't take an entire department, an entire function of your organization and pull it out of the organization and stick it into a second group, which is kind of your board, which kind of lives in a bubble over your organization or outside of your organization. It is a critical function, right? My son was telling me the other night, he says, this is a little gross for medical people, but for people who don't like medical stuff, but he said, Mom, do you know that some people are born with their hearts outside of their rib cage and nothing, a scratch could kill them. If they fall on it, it could kill them, right? You don't want to intentionally pull your heart out and wear it unprotected, right? It belongs inside the body of your organization, not outside. And so by putting fundraising outside and on your board, you create a huge amount of dysfunction. You create a huge amount of risk, just like it's very risky to have your heart on the outside.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's another reason why we don't need to build fundraising boards. How do you reconcile, though? Like, it does make sense to have people with money, right, supporting your organization and getting them together in a group. Well, there is no reason why you can't make a separate committee. I like to call it a circle of friends, where you stack all the people with money. You get them working together as a group. you form community, but you don't give them all the authoritative power that a board legally has. So you've separated those two. And let me
Right.
tell you a secret, a lot of people who have a lot of money and want to support your nonprofit right now, they're busy and they don't want to be on your board, right?
Hate to burst your
So
bubble.
that's right. There's another reason is you will
Yes.
have an even greater group of people come together with money, leveraging their networks if you create a separate group that is not your board.
Makes sense. Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I always appreciate you sharing every, all of the stuff that you've picked up and all of your wisdom. It really is amazing. And I think, we overthink things so much. You've thought and looked into all of these details so well that you're able to pull out, and it really is kind of simple, basic stuff that we should just recognize works. So I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to Thursday when we'll find out so much more about what we can do with our boards to just make sure that that everything is set up in a way that's functional and that we're pushing forward with our mission. So appreciate it, and we will talk later.
Yeah, wonderful. Bye, everybody.
Bye.